Hey, what up, Skeletor here. I'm back at it with another comic book haul, and this week we're looking at Absolute Batman number 2, NYX number 5, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 9, The Uncanny X-Men number 5, Amazing Spider-Man number 61, The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, Batman, Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age. First up, we're looking at Gotham by Gaslight number 6 of 6, written by Andy Digler and art by Leandro Fernandez. As I mentioned last time, Constantine got introduced. I couldn't understand why he was there, but apparently this issue tells us everything we need to know about him. He's been captured by Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. While interrogated, he mentions that there is rumors of a being throughout history who has managed to survive way longer than any human should be able to. He mentions that the whole reason he's here is that he's working for the Queen of England, and that he knows whatever the League of Assassins is guarding is beginning to wake up, and he can't have that fall into the Queen's hands. It's been guarded for all these years, and it needs to stay guarded. The League's ready to assassinate him, and then he mentions the Man in Black, aka Batman. We cut over to the South Atlantic, and Wonder Woman is riding on a boat towards America. But during the trip, crewmen are like, hey, there's something hiding in the basement, hiding in the below decks area. Wonder Woman goes to check it out, and it turns out to be Martian Manhunter, who declares, I came to this world to hunt the man who laid waste to mine. Back in Kansas, Clark is watching over the prison. I would say Mesmero or I think this is Deathstroke. It's probably Mesmero. It could be Deathstroke, whatever. This screwball shows up, hypnotizes Clark, releases all the prisoners, and then sets Clark on fire. Which brings us to the circus, led by Harley Quinn, involving Killer Croc and Copperhead. Copperhead's definitely one of the C or D list villains. Also, I thought it was kind of interesting how the horse she's riding is dressed up like Joker. Green hair, the red lipstick. It's interesting. I don't think it really says much, but it's interesting. And that she's rigged the entire stadium with explosives. Lois Lane dips out to go deal with the explosives and try and disarm them, while Batman shows up in Kansas to deal with Green Lantern, who technically isn't Green Lantern yet. It's Alan Scott. But Alan Scott manages to awaken the Green Lantern's powers, explodes Batman out of the wall and into the street, and then shows his true lantern form, which isn't that different from modern day. I think this isn't necessarily a time period outfit. This is just, here's a Green Lantern. Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman teleport in, right to where Clark is being set on fire. But he emerges from the fire in his Superman outfit, which is just not great. I'm not a fan of this. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this particular look. Like, you didn't even try. You came up with a whole new character and decided this is Superman. Everything we've been reading up till now condenses into this one issue. This is the end of it. This is 6 of 6, but the story will continue in Gotham by Gaslight, A League for Justice, coming in 2025. I would have preferred an actual conclusion to this story. If you wanted to continue it, that's fine, but give us some kind of resolution, and you did not. The art isn't great, but it's still consistent with the rest of it. In terms of Gotham by Gaslight, I would prefer this over the original simply because the original is just Batman in Victorian era versus Jack the Ripper. Meanwhile, this is a mystery. The mystery falls apart and everything kind of becomes really crappy, for lack of a better word. Gotham by Gaslight was a one-off. This is clearly meant to be an ongoing thing, but we're going to be changing titles from Kryptonian Age to League for Justice, which I'm sure will run for a few issues and then change to some other name. This was a letdown. Honestly, this whole thing was a letdown. There's no resolution. We're all just building up for the Justice League of the Victorian era. I'm sorry, this is, you know what, honestly, this is, out of 5, I want to say it's a 3 out of 5, because it's still roughly consistent with everything else, and I still enjoy this more than the original Gotham by Gaslight, but the fact that you can't even resolve any of your issues, 2 out of 5. I'm going to say Gotham by Gaslight is a solid 2 out of 5, and chances are I'm not going to be picking up the sequel. Gave it a shot, wasn't happy. It is what it is. Next up is Spider-Man number 61, The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, Part 1, written by Joe Kelly with art by Ed McGuinness. I'll be honest, it's a very fun start. It's just Spidey. I don't know if this guy is a window washer or a villain or a good guy, generic crook, I don't know. Spidey's saving this dude while dealing with a bad guy named Burnout, and the entire time he's trying to come up with a better name for Burnout. we're intercut with pieces of the old Parker look. Not being able to pay rent, ditching out on dates, burning up rent money. But right as he's about to defeat the villain, he explodes into orange birds. Because it turns out Dr. Doom, aka Doctor Strange, aka Sorcerer Supreme, shows up and decides Spider-Man will be his champion. Spider-Man declines because fuck you, Dr. Doom. And we get a quick cameo by Spider-Boy. Not a fan of this guy. He shouldn't exist. This is the writer Dan Slott creating OCs for the sake of creating OCs. I don't think this is gonna last too long, but he's here. But as they're talking, there's a huge explosion. Spidey runs off to figure out what's going on, and there's a demon in the middle of the street who apparently has the ability to control gravity. Spidey gets his butt whooped, and right as he's defeated, Doctor Doom shows up and he's like, hey, you, this is the task that I sent to you, and you're still taking it on anyway. Would you like some magical abilities to help you? And Spidey's like, hell yeah! This is followed by a 2-page spread, which is beautifully drawn. It's possibly watercolor? I'm not sure what this is. This looks amazing. But it's the story of Doctor Strange going up against Sidorak, whatever, the demon who powers the gem that powers Juggernaut and makes him invincible. Apparently Doctor Strange made a horrible deal with this guy. Dr. Doom's talking some smack about, but the truth is, everything we're seeing here is right on point with Doctor Strange. Because, to be real, when Doctor Strange shows up in someone else's comic, he's a MacGuffin. He is the ultimate power with the ultimate spell that can save the day and fix everything. When Doctor Strange is in his own comic, he's making bad decisions out of haste without putting any real thought into it and having to pay the price later on. He is a flawed man doing the best he can. And this spread page really puts that on full display. Every couple years, due to the deal, every couple of years, the Scions or the champions of Sidorak will show up on Earth to fight Doctor Strange, and apparently Doctor Strange is never ever actually ready for that. He uses a different cheat to rebirth himself after he dies fighting each of these demons. But now that Doctor Strange is dead, and Dr. Doom is the Sorcerer Supreme, Spider-Man has been chosen to be the new champion, mainly because Spidey will always put himself in between harm and innocent civilians, making him the perfect champion of Earth. Doom gives Spidey a new suit, and I'm getting some Spawn Kamen Rider type vibes. I mean, yeah, the red scarf, a long flowing red scarf. The silver and red isn't black. Honestly, the whole suit design seems like a toy we would have gotten in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Doesn't look bad, it's just, whatever. The suit also gives Spidey knowledge of all of these spells and all of these things he's looking at that he shouldn't have magical knowledge of, and thus he's able to use spells such as the Wicked Webs of Wundagore. He fights the demon for a minute and then realizes the demon has a black hole inside of its mouth, which is what allows it to control gravity. And here's where stupid decisions come into play. Instead of throwing something into it, instead of using a spell to rip it out of him, Spidey powers up his fist and just straight up punches the black hole. The demon is defeated, but unfortunately the black hole collapses, and it takes Spidey with him. If you saw Doctor Strange 2, you saw Mr. Fantastic get spaghettified. I don't know what the correct term here is. He turns into spaghetti. This now happens to Spidey. The time between the rendering of toe flesh and the last compression of scalp atoms takes seconds. But for the deceased, the process feels like it takes 96 hours, thanks to time-space distortion. So we get this beautiful panel of Spidey being spaghettified, ripped apart on an atomic level, and the fact that we know that Spidey just had to sit there and get ripped apart for 96 hours. And this is part 1 of 10, people. I have this horrifying, sickening feeling that this is just going to be 10 issues of Spidey getting murdered over and over again in more and more horrific ways. Doesn't it feel great to pay money to watch a character you love get murdered over and over again? Once he hits the afterlife, Phil Coulson meets him, and apparently there was a comic called Infinity Watch where Phil Coulson becomes Death. I completely missed out on that. This is all news to me. He's still playing that kind of goofy geek fanboy he was in the movie, because Phil Coulson is a movie character who was popular enough to cross over into the comics. I'm not a fan of this, but right as he's about to take Spidey to the afterlife, the reeds of... I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. The Doctor Doom gave Spidey a couple of reeds, like, you know, plant reeds, and they will rebirth him 8 times. So technically Spidey's dead, but he immediately gets brought back to life. And it is horrifying. Like, he's literally being stitched back together from scratch. And he mentions that later in the quiet of his room, this moment comes back to him in his head, and he relives his rebirth over again. Because in the moment, it hurt too much to even think. That is insane. That is insane. I'm worried that the next 9 issues is just going to be this. We get to watch someone we care about get murdered and brought back at excruciating pain over and over again. I understand that the editors and you know, the head honchos really don't like White Spider-Man. They want Miles to be the Spider-Man. And thus for the last like 5, 6, 7 years, we've been screwing over Peter hard as fuck. But this feels like maybe we're going just a little too far. Once Peter's reborn, the ghost of Doctor Strange shows up and he's like, yeah, I got bad news. You're gonna have to fight the rest of these guys and you're probably gonna die 7 more times. And if you don't, the Earth dies. You know, we were all good until Peter started getting de-atomized and spaghettified. This was the start of something great. And then you just went and crapped all over the food table. This was a fun start. I enjoyed the splash page of deep lore. The fight, however the fight went, I felt that was just a little too short. The fact that it's like, what, 2 pages? I'm not game for that. And the fact that we're putting Spidey through endless pain for absolutely 0 reason, I'm not really down for that either. Because this was good until the very end, I want to say this is like a 3 out of 5, but let's be honest here. If you're a Spidey fan, you're getting used to suffering, but this is a whole new level of suffering. I'm going to say this is a 2 out of 5. 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, part 1 of 10. This is a 2 out of 5. Next up is NYX, number 5, written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, art by Francisco Mortarino. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. And before we get into the actual review, this issue comes with a Q&A. Real quick, let me know down in the comments below, which X character do you feel the strongest connection to? You know, overall, just in the zeitgeist of it all, probably Wolverine, maybe Cyclops. In the modern day, in the here and now, I'm going to say it's Nightcrawler. I really liked what he was doing with that whole spark situation back on Krakoa. The Uncanny Spider-Man, where Nightcrawler basically becomes Spider-Man, that kind of carried over, and now he's here. And he's not really getting character development, but he's still the same guy he's always been. You know what? Which X character do you feel the strongest connection to? Probably Nightcrawler. I'm gonna say Nightcrawler. Let me know in the comments who you feel closest to. So we pick up where we last left off. Prodigy has had his entire life flipped upside down due to a superhero fight. We get a brief glimpse of him in court with She-Hulk. And the humans are beginning to vote on a new law that will put the mutants into ghettos. Also, we get a panel of Sophie realizing, I screwed over my friends and I shouldn't be helping them just because my sisters want me to. Meanwhile, back at Prodigy's apartment, the NYX crew has shown up. They're trying to help him feel better. Unfortunately, there's a protest going on outside of his building. Sophie shows up, mentally shutting down everybody and freezing them in time. And the second she says, guys, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I want you to know I'm sorry and I'm going to try to make it up, Kamala immediately jumps down to ground floor, hugs Sophie, and she's like, girl, I am so glad you're sorry. Let's be friends. I'm sorry, you ruined a man's life. He lost his job, he almost went to jail, and he's been outed as a mutant. And that's not even counting the other stuff you did. That was literally just last issue. You blew up a subway. But Kamala is just all, I'm the friendship girl, and immediately forgives Sophie. And in between all of this, we get a glimpse of Manuel de la Roca. I have no idea who this guy is, but he's another psychic. I think he's like empath or something. Whatever. He's psychically controlling everybody within his vicinity. But his whole plan is push the humans against the mutants, force the mutants into a ghetto. Once the mutants are in a ghetto, they will have the drive to rise up and take back Krakoa. He just wants Krakoa back. I mean, to be fair, I do too. I'm sure a lot of other people do too, but the way he's going about it is kind of screwed up. Realizing they only have 24 hours before the vote to throw mutants into ghettos is taking place, Kamala decides to do what she does best in her own solo books and organizes a protest and gets people out there for the votes. It's I'm gonna say it's played off fairly well because there are other characters here besides Kamala. This isn't a Miss Marvel solo book, but the fact that we're still going this route, get people to the polls, change their minds with talking instead of violence. Which makes sense, on paper, which makes sense. But the fact that you're solving all of your problems with this, bro, it's not 2016 anymore. Like, it's okay, Marvel. You don't have to do this anymore. Sophie is in something of a hive mind with her other 4 sisters, and she breaks connection with them because they're doing bad stuff and she doesn't want to be a part of that anymore. Unfortunately, once she breaks connection with them, it would seem she's left without psychic powers or something. I'm sure this is going to be followed up in the next issue, but she mentions she can't hear the voices anymore. She can't hear the people around her anymore. She may potentially have lost her psychic powers. I'm sure it's going to be temporary at best, but still. X-23 and Local activate Local's powers. He links Kamala into every cell phone and TV in the immediate area, and she puts on this whole big speech about how we need to rise up and vote and let the people know our voice by our vote, and we should have solidarity, and we can fight fascism, and we can fight all the evil in the world simply by voting. It's this is what I have come to expect from Kamala. She's been moving away from this in the last, couple years. I'm gonna say that's because Biden was in office, but now that Trump is being brought back in, Kamala's heading back into hardcore voting, get the minorities in here territory. I'm gonna hope that's an editor mandate and not like the writer themselves kind of thing. Because they did such a good job, the vote doesn't pass, mutants are thrown into ghettos, and everybody goes home happy. I do believe that's the end of the first story arc, although next up, NYX number 6, we're dealing with Mojo. We'll see what happens there. Overall, the art was good. It wasn't anything different, but it was good. Honestly, for all of this, I would say it's a 2 out of 5, but I honestly had enough fun reading this. Like, I actually enjoyed reading this despite all the political voting nonsense. I'm gonna say it's a 3 out of 5, and that extra point comes from fun, because I had fun with this, and that's what's important. 3 out of 5 for NYX. Next up is the Spectacular Spider-Men, number 9, written by Greg Weisman and art by Andreas Janelot and Emilio Lazo. Lazo? I'm butchering these names, man, I'm sorry. Where we last left off, somebody in the cafe support group suddenly developed powers out of nowhere. They turn into fire, to air, to water, to earth. They're an elemental character. And they didn't know they had these powers. Nobody else knew they had these powers. This was the big reveal. Peter and Miles are trying to figure out how to deal with this, and we're jumping between past and present. And by past, I mean the end of last issue. Peter and Miles didn't know what to do with this, so they ran away, put on their Spider-Man outfits, and came back. It would seem that this new chick's powers work in relation to her emotions. So anytime you feel a new emotion or a different emotion, imagine you just change from human to water or to fire or something. Like, it's an interesting concept. Everyone there is trying to debate, like, is she an inhuman? Is she a mutant? Is she something else? But Peter gets the great idea to call in a bunch of different heroes to try and train her, because even if we can't figure out how the powers work, we can at least figure out how to control them. So Miles calls in Viv, who confirms that this chick is not a robot, or an android, or a replicant. Then Kamala shows up, along with Sophie and Prodigy, which leads nowhere. I feel like that was just purely for cameo's sake. And then Spidey grabs Hydro Man from Ravencroft, aka Marvel's Arkham Asylum. Hydro Man gives her a crash course in how to use her water powers. Unfortunately, while she's using her water powers, the chick she's got a crush on has her girlfriend show up, and she loses it. And when Hydro Man and her clash, they kind of trade memories. The fact that they would, put a whole page to that makes me think this is going to come up later. All she can say is Hydro Man has done some horrible things in the past, and all Hydro Man can say is, oh, this is just too sad. All the unrequited passion can't even. Just take me back to Ravencroft. Then the Fantastic Four show up because this chick is roughly, loosely, the Fantastic Four in one package. Kind of. The Thing isn't an Earth guy, but Johnny is a fire guy, and thus Johnny can teach her how to use her powers as far as fire and flying. And we get a great scene of them flying around, and Peter's like, hey, she might actually be a hero after all. We might have just gained a new ally. Also, I glossed over it, but in between all of this, we keep cutting back to the bar with no name, and Electro ends up bumping into his ex, who he turned into female Electro purely by accident a long time ago, like the 90s or something. A few issues back, she got her butt whooped by 2 different spiders, and it made the name Electro look bad on TV. So now he wants her to quit being Electro, and she doesn't want to, so they're gonna fight, which apparently is gonna be issue 10. 2 spiders versus 2 Electros. I gotta say, I'm a little upset Humberto Ramos was not doing the art for this one, but the art is good. It's solid. It's good. I'm not upset with it. I just wish Humberto Ramos was in something that I picked up this week. Basically, this is just the story of this new chick learning to use her powers. I'll give this a 3 out of 5. I almost, just on Spider-Man alone, compared to what Amazing Spider-Man was, this is a step above. For that reason alone, I'm going to say this is a 4 out of 5. I know I'm being a little generous here. Spectacular Spider-Man, 4 out of 5. And next up, we've got Batman number 2, written by Scott Snyder with art by Nick Dragotta. Again, we're being narrated by Alfred, who mentions he's been watching Batman for a few weeks now, and we're in the middle of Batman fighting the party animals in the middle of a aquarium. He does some pretty cool tricks, like sticking to the ceiling using his, I don't know what the word is, cape tendrils. He also uses his weird back spikes to break the water tank and flood the place. Alfred mentions how there is AF, advance forward, and RR, retreat and regroup. And every time he watches Batman goes out, he keeps thinking, this is gonna be the time Batman retreats and regroups. But no, Batman only advances forwards. To the point where he realizes Batman is only an advance and forwards. Batman AF. Which is kind of funny because this absolute Batman is Batman as fuck. There's a cute scene between Mayor Gordon, and Batman's mom, Martha, hanging out in the hospital. She sneaks some cigarettes in and gives him one, and they take a quick little talk about Bruce and how he's changed lately. We also find out that Bruce goes to poker night with all of his old friends from school, aka Harvey Dent, Oswald Cobblepot, Edward Nygma, Waylon, whatever his name is, Killer Croc, Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face. They haven't become villains yet, although it is implied that Penguin is part of some sort of mafia. It turns out that Batman gets his money by winning poker games against these guys, which is kind of weird. I don't think the writer really looked into things. If you're a construction worker, you make a decent amount of money. Like, you get a good bill every fucking week. That's non-disputable, whatever state you live in America. Like, if you're a construction worker, you're getting paid. For whatever reason, the comic is treating Bruce as if he's legitimately broke, no money. I understand, you're spending money on bat suits and like Kevlar and whatever you need to build a Batmobile, but like, you're making money. You know, you don't need to try and say, well, the only reason I can beat Batman is because I'm good at gambling. Batman runs out of money and drops down a party animal skull. It's a mask, but it's got electrodes. It's basically a computer in a helmet. And if you know what you're doing, you can use that computer to triangulate where each of the party animals' base is, and puts that up for ante. And the final page of the card game is Bruce winning with 3 of aces, 4 if we're playing with jokers. And everybody just says, jokers are never welcome here, Bruce. Kind of foreshadowing. I'm just gonna say that's foreshadowing. Bruce then breaks into the mayor's office to find files on Arkham, only to be met by Black Mask, who sends all of his people into the building to take him out. Luckily, Bruce has a contingency plan, and as he drops into an elevator shaft to escape, he bumps into Alfred. Because it's dark, we can't see exactly where they are, but turns out this Batman, this absolute madman, built his Batmobile in the ground floor of the mayor's office, or elevator. Also, the Batmobile here is an absolute unit. Like, this isn't a tank, this is a house on wheels, and the house is made of metal. He explodes out of the building and goes on a rampage. And the final page is some poor lost chick looking up and realizing Catwoman is here, and Catwoman's just a chick in a hoodie with cat ears. I still had fun with this. This was definitely good. I had a lot more fun with last issue, but issue 2 was still good. On a scale of 1 to 5, this is easily a 4. There's an argument to be made for 3, but I'm gonna say 4 out of 5. Because even though it was short, it didn't really expand too much. It was fun. It's a bit more backstory instead of moving things forwards. 4 out of 5. And finally, we're on our top pick of the week, X-Men number 5, written by Gail Simone and art by David Marquez. Also, I'll just spoil this right now. The cover is a complete tease. Gambit doesn't protect the cats, and the cats don't protect Gambit. They don't even come into play. Like, the bad guys don't even make it into the house. The cover is just a cool looking cover. None of this happens. We open on Rogue lying bloody on the ground. She got her ass kicked by Sarah, and as she tries to wake up, she keeps having trouble with that. She's getting her scalp cut off. Sarah wants Rogue's hair. We cut back to the farmhouse with the rest of the X-Men and the new kids trying to protect the family who owns the farmhouse, and Gambit pulls out an entire box of cards. I quote, "She got a whole murder of them cards with little cartoon monsters on them." I'm sorry, I'm terrible at that accent. It is what it is. Little cards with little cartoon monsters on. That could be a Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, something made up specifically for the Marvel Universe. For my own benefit, I'm just gonna say that's Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And my lord, if you have an entire box of those things, A, that is deadly in this man's hands. B, oh my god, you are throwing out so much money. Dear god, the amount of money, you are literally just exploding. Holy crap. The X-Men pop into battle, it's gonna be good. This whole thing is basically just one giant fight. And during the fight, we cut back to Rogue, who's, for lack of a better term, in purgatory, I guess? Possibly heaven. White light, white room. She bumps into the little cancer kid from issue 1. And he reveals that he actually is a mutant. His power is to give glimpses into the future, to give glimpses into specific people's future. And that when he grabbed Rogue's hand in issue 1, he was intentionally giving her his powers, which, going back an issue or 2, is how Rogue knew that Wolverine was dying and knew to go save him. The fight is good. For whatever reason, Horse Chick can just turn into a flaming version of Juggernaut. I don't... These new kids have such vague powers, I don't know what the hell is going on, but it's a giant fight. It's a cool fight, and we get a quick glimpse into the X-Men's future. It looks like Magneto got his groove back, Nightcrawler has 4 arms, there's a lady Cyclops. I don't know if that's Kitty or Rogue or Jean, but they have Cyclops' powers. Honestly, for how things are going, we could just straight up gender bend Cyclops and keep him the same. Also, Colossus is dead due to robot dogs, and the 4 new kids we've been with this whole time also are long dead, along with the horse. That's kind of sad. During the fight at the farmhouse, the X-Men start losing, and Gambit grabs the Eye of Agamotto. Eye of Power? I don't know how to use you. Please save my friends. Followed by a gigantic green magic eruption, wiping out all the bad guys. How convenient. The little cancer kid uses the last of his abilities to heal Rogue's broken arm, and she immediately gets up and whoops Sarah's butt. Something fierce. Rogue breaks both of her arms, throws her through some trees, and ultimately defeats her. After the defeat, Rogue drops her off at Greymalkin Manor. Oh, not technically. Rogue drops her off with the people who are running Greymalkin Manor and says, hey, we don't actually have a prison right now. We can't store this chick, so we're gonna give her back to you. But just so we're on the same page, we're gonna come back for X-Mansion real soon. You best be ready for that. This was a fun one. It moved the story forwards. It was good to see Rogue kicking ass. It was good to see the rest of the X-Men kicking ass. I love the little thing about the cards. I mean, you kind of already know how this goes. This was the last thing in the review, which means for this week, this is a 5 out of 5. Out of 5 issues of Uncanny X-Men, this is probably a 3 or a 4, but I ain't gonna complain. I'm having fun with this, and the story's actually going somewhere. Uncanny X-Men. This was a 5 out of 5. And that's been my top picks for the week. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and, again, let me know in the comments, which X-Men character do you most identify with? I've been Skeletor, and if you like what you saw, like, subscribe, and check out the rest of the channel. We got more cool stuff there, and we got Shaolin Showdown review from Fat Man coming real soon. I've been Skeletor. Catch you later.